The sea looked endless that morning, a glassy expanse reflecting a sky too calm for what was coming. My husband, Daniel, was laughing beside me, his hand wrapped around a glass of champagne, the other resting casually on the back of my chair. A gesture that would have looked loving to anyone else. To me, it felt like a practice performance. We were on a week-long family cruise, a celebration of our 10th anniversary. Our daughter Lily had just turned 8, and my in-laws insisted on joining us. Daniel called it a chance to reset. I called it pretending. Marriage, I'd learned, wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the silences between them. And lately, those silences between us had become unbearable. The dining hall smelled of salt, citrus, and something faintly sweet. Maybe the strawberry mousse being served 2 tables away. A soft tune floated from the grand piano. But my attention wasn't on the music. It was on the woman across the table, Daniel's sister, Monica. She'd been unusually quiet that morning, her eyes darting between Daniel and me, as if she was caught between 2 secrets. "You should try the ceviche." "Claire," Daniel said, flashing his smile. "The one that charmed clients, waitresses, and occasionally me." I smiled back, mechanical, hollow. The air around us was too still, the conversation too careful. I could feel something humming beneath the surface, like the low vibration of a warning. That's when it happened. A waitress, young, olive-skinned, her dark hair tucked neatly under a cap, approached our table with a tray of drinks. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed a glass before me. Her eyes met mine, just for a second too long. Then, as she adjusted my napkin, her fingers brushed mine, and something paper-thin slid under my palm. No one else noticed. Not Daniel, who was now laughing at something his father said. Not Monica, who stared fixedly at her untouched salad. I unfolded the napkin slightly, pretending to smooth it out. A small note, written in hurried pen strokes, peeked from beneath. Only 3 words. "Call 911, please." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The letters blurred. My throat tightened. My pulse quickened in my ears. I looked up, but the waitress was already gone, swallowed by the crowd of uniforms and trays. My first instinct was absurd, to glance at Daniel, but he was mid-laugh, his phone face down on the table, his hand resting near it possessively. I tucked the note into my lap, heart pounding. I didn't know who it was meant for, or why it was given to me, but in that moment, as the ship rocked gently and the laughter around me continued, like nothing had changed, I knew something had, and it wasn't just the tide. The note burned against my palm like a live ember. I slipped it into my clutch, forcing a smile as Daniel raised his glass for yet another toast. To family, to love, to second chances. His voice carried the easy confidence of a man who believed his own performance. Everyone clinked glasses. Everyone except me. My reflection in the champagne flute looked distorted, warped by the bubbles. Fitting, I thought. Everything about my marriage had started to feel that way. Slightly off, deceptively effervescent on the surface, but sour underneath. "Claire, are you all right?" Monica's voice startled me. Her tone was too cautious, almost rehearsed. "I'm fine," I said quickly. Too quickly. She hesitated, then looked away. I caught her glance flicker toward Daniel. A quick, silent exchange I couldn't decode, but my gut twisted. They'd both been tense all morning, whispering near the railing when they thought no one was watching. After brunch, Daniel excused himself for a business call. We were on the open ocean, yet somehow, work still found him. Typical. I stayed behind with Lily, watching her chase bubbles across the deck. She laughed freely, untouched by the currents pulling around her. Her innocence anchored me, but the note in my purse was a weight I couldn't ignore. Every rational thought told me it was a mistake. Maybe the waitress had confused me with someone else. Maybe it was a prank. But her eyes, the fear in them had been real. I scanned the deck, searching for her. Dark hair, neat uniform, quick steps. But she was gone. That's when Monica appeared again, sliding into the deck chair beside me. Her perfume, gardenia, and sea salt, wrapped around us. Daniel's been distant lately, hasn't he? She said softly, almost kindly. The question landed like a blade. I turned to her, wary. What are you implying? She sighed, eyes on the horizon. Just, be careful who you trust, Claire. Sometimes the people closest to you hide the deepest secrets. Her words lingered long after she left. By sunset, Daniel was all charm again. Jokes over dinner, light touches, a performance polished to perfection. But I noticed how his phone never left his pocket, how he slipped away just before dessert. When he returned, his shirt collar was slightly askew, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, lying beside him in the cabin's dim light, I couldn't sleep. The ship's engines thrummed softly below, a rhythmic pulse that matched the unease in my chest. I reached for my clutch, pulled out the note again, and stared at those desperate words. Call 911, please. My mind raced through every possibility. Was it a warning or a trap? Outside, waves broke against the hull, steady and endless. Inside, my world was beginning to fracture, and somewhere on this ship, someone knew why. By morning, the cruise no longer felt like a vacation. It felt like confinement. The ship's hallways seemed narrower, the laughter of strangers sharper. Every sound, every glance felt loaded with subtext. Daniel was already gone when I woke. His side of the bed was cool, the sheets too neatly arranged for someone who'd just left. A faint trace of cologne lingered in the air, one I didn't recognize. I dressed quietly, slipping the note into my pocket. If it truly was a mistake, I needed to prove it. But if it wasn't, I needed to understand why me. The dining area buzzed with morning chatter. As I scanned the room, I caught sight of her, the waitress. She was clearing a table near the window, her movements stiff, her face pale. Our eyes met for an instant before she looked away. Then, subtly, she nodded toward the corridor leading to the lower deck. My heart quickened. I waited a few moments, pretending to sip my coffee, before slipping away from the table. The corridor was dim and narrow, humming with the ship's machinery. The waitress stood at the end, twisting a napkin in her hands. "Who are you?" I whispered. She glanced around before answering. "My name's Sophia. You're Claire Bennett, right?" I nodded slowly, confused. "They said you'd help," she said, voice trembling. "Please, he's dangerous." "I can't talk here. Who's dangerous?" I pressed, but before she could answer, heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Sophia flinched, her eyes darting toward the sound. She shoved something into my hand, a small silver pendant, before slipping through a service door. When I turned, Daniel was there. His expression was unreadable, calm but calculating. "You wandered off," he said, smiling faintly. "Everything okay? Just stretching my legs," I replied, slipping the pendant into my pocket. My voice betrayed me with a tremor. He studied me for a long second. Then his smile widened, too polished to be real. "Let's go back upstairs. Monica's looking for you." The rest of the morning blurred. Sophia didn't reappear. Monica avoided my gaze. Daniel seemed almost too attentive, pulling out my chair, brushing a crumb from my sleeve, overcompensating in ways that felt rehearsed. By evening, the ship reached open water again. A gala dinner was announced, and Daniel insisted we attend. I wore a dress he'd bought me years ago, navy silk that once made me feel beautiful. Tonight, it felt like armor. Under the chandelier's glow, Daniel laughed, charmed, and drank as if the world was whole. But I felt the pendant in my pocket, pressing against my skin, heavy and cold. When I finally dared to open it, hidden behind my napkin, my breath caught, Inside, tucked behind the glass, was a photograph, Daniel and Sophia, smiling, intimate. Not a stranger's mistake then. A warning, and now I understood exactly who I should have called. The photograph inside the pendant refused to release its grip on my mind. Every smile in that tiny image screamed betrayal. Daniel's arm around Sophia, her head resting on his shoulder, their faces lit with an intimacy I hadn't seen from him in years. It wasn't the picture that broke me. It was the ease of their happiness, the quiet confirmation that while I'd been trying to keep our family afloat, he'd already jumped ship. During the gala dinner, I sat across from him beneath the glittering chandeliers, the music swelling around us. He laughed with the captain, charmed the table, refilled my glass as if nothing existed beyond this moment. My throat tightened with the taste of champagne and bitterness. "Daniel," I said softly. He turned to me, all smiles and surface warmth. "Yes, love." I leaned closer. "How long have you known Sophia?" The smile faltered, barely, like a crack in polished glass. "Who?" "The waitress," I said evenly. "The one who asked me to call 911. He froze. For the first time in years, I saw something raw flicker behind his eyes. Fear. Then it vanished. "I think you've had too much to drink," he said calmly, placing his hand over mine. The gesture might have looked affectionate to others, but his fingers pressed down hard, controlling. "Let's not make a scene." I smiled back, a mirror of his own deceit, and whispered, "You already have." He withdrew his hand. The rest of the dinner passed in suffocating silence. Every laugh around us felt distant, every movement rehearsed. I excused myself early, saying I needed air. Daniel didn't stop me. On the upper deck, the sea stretched into black infinity. The wind stung my face as I gripped the railing, the pendant heavy in my palm. I turned it over, studying its back. Faint engraving, barely visible under the moonlight. 2 initials intertwined, D and S. So it wasn't just lust. It was possession. Behind me, footsteps approached. "Claire!" Daniel's voice came, smooth, almost pleading. "Please, let's not do this here." I didn't turn. "How long?" A pause. Then, "A few months." It was nothing serious. Nothing serious. My laugh came out brittle. "She begged me to call 911. Does that sound like nothing?" He hesitated. And in that hesitation, everything unraveled. "She got attached," he said finally. "Threatened to tell you. I told her to stop contacting me, but she wouldn't listen." I faced him then, the ocean roaring below. "So you silenced her?" His eyes flicked away, guilt slicing through his composure. "You don't understand. I was trying to protect us. Protect us." The words echoed like thunder. I took a step back, the wind tearing through my hair, the pendant glinting in my hand. "You didn't protect us, Daniel. You buried us." For the first time, he had no reply. And somewhere below deck, a truth, or a body, waited to surface. I didn't sleep that night. The storm hit just before dawn, rain slamming against the porthole, thunder rolling like judgment across the sky. I sat on the edge of the bed, still dressed in the navy silk gown, the pendant lying open on my palm. The photograph inside had begun to curl from the moisture in the air, its edges bending, as if recoiling from its own truth. Daniel hadn't come back to the cabin. I told myself I didn't care, but the silence he left behind was a kind of haunting. I thought of Sophia's trembling hands, of the terror in her eyes, and wondered if she was still somewhere below deck, or if she had vanished for good. When the storm finally broke, I walked the empty corridors until I found the captain's office. He looked startled when I entered, the pendant clutched tightly in my fist. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I think someone on your staff is in danger," I said. He frowned, but when I showed him the photograph and the note, the color drained from his face. Within minutes, security officers were dispatched. The ship buzzed with quiet urgency. Doors opening, radios crackling, whispers trailing like shadows. By noon, Sophia was found, alive, frightened, hidden in a storage room near the lower galley. When I saw her again, she was wrapped in a blanket, her eyes wide but alive with gratitude. She told the officers everything. How Daniel had pursued her, promised her a new life, then turned violent when she tried to end it. How he'd threatened her to keep silent, and how she feared he'd make good on those threats. I listened without speaking, a dull ache spreading through my chest. Each word was another nail sealing the coffin of who I thought my husband was. Daniel was taken into custody the moment we docked. He didn't fight, didn't even look at me as they led him away. I thought I'd feel triumph, but what I felt was quieter, like standing in the ruins of something you'd built with your own hands. Lily asked where her father was. I told her he'd made some mistakes and needed time to fix them. She nodded, trusting me in a way that broke my heart. That night, I stood by the shore, the waves lapping gently at my feet, the cruise ship shrinking on the horizon. The pendant lay open in my hand once more. Without thinking, I let it fall into the sea. It sank quickly, vanishing beneath the grey water, as if returning to the place where all buried truths eventually rest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel adrift. I felt still, anchored, free. People talk about revenge like it's fire, but sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's the sound of waves swallowing the past, and you walking away without looking back.